This episode of UDSP is brought to you by Audible. For a free 30-day trial and to receive a free, yes, free audio book, all you have to do is go over to www.audible.com/Gamebreaker. What's up, everybody? Welcome to UDSP, the Unicorn Duck Shadow Puppet WildStar Show for December 16th, 2013. This is episode number 29. I'm Gary Gannon, and you're watching Gamebreaker TV. Joining me, as always, with the Farhan Siddiqui. How are you, sir?
Good, good. Yeah, we got the music going. We can finally talk about the game.
We can talk. Pumped. It's going to be a festive show. Everybody can talk. Mr. Mark Taylor from Guild Umbra, how are you?
I'm doing all right. Level 1 to 15, Theorycraft helmet off.
And so yes, if you guys for some reason were not on the internet, lots of people were allowed to stream the WildStar this weekend. A lot of people were playing the WildStar. The NDA dropped from 1 to 15, levels 1 to 15. Everybody can talk freely. So I'm just gonna put it out there. WoW is dead, right?
Ooh, shots fired. Crossbow.
Yeah,
I know what I'm going to be playing.
Oh,
for sure.
Right.
Well, I mean, I think about the only way that this game or any game could hurt WoW is just people just want to play something different. But you know, I don't think there's going to ever be a WoW killer, air quotes. You know.
Come on, Mr. Debbie Downer.
Buy into the hype just for a moment, and then
just for 30 seconds, just to amuse me.
WildStar's going to crush it. Well, that's because all the good developers left, and now they're over at Carbine.
All right. Let's start with character creation. Hey, let's start with character creation. I mean, that's usually where everybody starts, making your character. Were there any restrictions whatsoever on what you could make, roll, do?
So the only restriction, I guess you could say, is that the Chua medic isn't in the game yet. But I think that's not like a restriction. That's just it's not quite ready yet. But everything else is good to go.
So what did you roll, Farhan?
What didn't I roll? I guess.
Oh, okay. Well, let's not go through. Let's pick one. How's that? Let's pick the one that you actually played the most that we'll talk about, because we can't go over every single one.
All right. I played the most Stalker. By far. Yes. Okay, I didn't expect that, but then it.
What did you sort of think of the character creation and the amount of options, choices, sliders?
Okay. So I thought that it was pretty good, and I'm not like huge on the I want exactly this setup for my character. I like to just get in there, especially because the armor ends up covering up so much of it that becomes my character creator long term. Is I like to customize my armor after the fact, not so much like insanely huge on just the beginning of the character creation thing. But I thought it's pretty good. They have a lot of good options. Obviously, I think that they've said that they're adding more options as they're going. That there's a few things that some people don't like some of the Mikari heads are a little bit strange looking, so some people want something a little bit different. I like it. I like the Bumblebee head personally, like the big giant it's like a Cyclops Bumblebee head going on. I have fun with it, but and they do have like facial sliders, but they don't have body type sliders or anything like that. So I know that that's something that a lot of people want, like a body type slider, but just, whatever.
Body type slider meaning, is there a height slider, or are you meaning just more towards like physique? You want a little chubby guy, you want a really skinny, nerdy, short pants wearing guy? Hipster?
I mean, either way, they don't have it in the game. The only thing that they have sliders for is for the face, so you can do like a chin slider or like nose and just walk around with like where all the parts of your face go, but you can't do like height or physique.
Which I never really understand why they do that, because, I mean, most MMO players play a little bit panned out, so you can never really see a person's face. Plus, if that's your tune, you're always looking at the back of their head anyway. So, yeah, I'm really hoping that they're going to add the body type sliders, before launch anyway.
And Mark, what did you roll? And big ups to the Guild Umbra. You're representing Gamebreaker, streaming all weekend on the channel and stuff like that. So big ups. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Hey. What
was your main?
Engineer. I kind of said it last week. for obvious reasons. But I was gonna go with the warrior, but the engineer, once it was a playable class, has just kind of sucked me in. And I got to be honest, it's for a couple of reasons. A, I'm lazy, so I just love the fact that I can kind of plant myself. I mean, you can move, you can run and gun, but I like the fact that I can just pivot, target. You know, it does have Alt Tab, even though they have the telegraphs, but Alt Tab or Tab rather. You know, shoot that guy. Tab, shoot that guy, and I don't
Tell
have
me
to
about
chase
character
him down.
creation a little bit. What was that like for the engineer?
So I did the Macari
Macari?
as well. So kind of like Farhan was saying, I mean, they have some like really cool faces, and so they have different things other than like hair and ears and noses. They've got like these weird add-ons and stuff that you can add to make you look either ridiculous or interesting. So I went with something very drilled down because instead of hair, you have like a crystal. So I did pretty much like the cropped thing where it's like a closed helmet, and I guess in my mind, I'm a closet RPer, so I'm sitting there thinking, well,
Where
if I
did
get
that
hit
come
in my
from?
head, yeah, I don't know. But like if I get hit in the head because it's like all metal, like I'll be safer some kind of way in my head.
I expected Mark
But-
Taylor to just be like random, done, hit random,
Random start.
2, 3, 4 times, done.
Stop
So what do you
when
think
it's acceptable.
besides the body sort of physique sliders for character creation, anything else that either of you guys think was awesome or think was missing?
I think one thing that it didn't get to me at first when you're first creating a character, because especially since they give you so much control over the face specifically, you sort of expect, okay, I'm creating the face, I'm like fine tuning it, and this is like just another side bit, but they have this cool option in the game where you can generate like a little code, like sort of like how like when you go to a talent calculator and you create your build or whatever, you have like a little code, like you can copy paste the code so that if you want to recreate that character exactly the way it was with all the sliders and everything, the way you set it up, you can recreate it exactly by just pasting that code back into the box. But so that's pretty cool. But the thing is that they give a lot of emphasis on the face, but then your characters actually have expressions, and that was especially surprising for you for the Macari because like you sort of expect a robot face, but they their mouth can like sort of go up and down and make expressions as they're doing, which is cool, but it's not totally obvious when you're doing character creation. So when I created a Chua, I was like, okay, I'm going to give him the biggest mouth ever because I just wanted to look like, crazy maniacal. And every Chua actually has like this giant grin on their face when the character's like going crazy. And when you do it with the biggest mouth possible, then it's like everywhere. So I think what would be cool would be the option to actually see different emotes while you're doing the character creation, so you can see what the face looks like as you're changing the thing, because it's not always going to have exactly the face you're going to see. That's also obvious with the Cassians because you have like sort of a generic, okay, I'm standing here face when you're creating, and then when you actually at the character select, they have like this really like, oh, I am, looking down at you kind of thing. So it looks different than it actually is in the game.
I think also instead of like an emote, it's with the mood, because like if you slash whatever your mood is, that normally changes your default face in most MMOs from being like walking around I'm slash happy or slash scowling or mad or upset. And so like Farhan was saying, like all the tunes relative to the class have like some kind of default mood that they seem to be in. So all of the Chua, like when you're not moving them, you know how like normally they'll kind of like look around most MMOs, the Chua will like get down into this like little, like
maniacal stance of one
evil genius.
Yeah. Who am I going to sneak up on and ruin their day in grief? All right, so for the most part, that would be a little nice feature. Maybe an add-on. Maybe they could add that on. Possibly.
That'd be cool. But
all right, so
stuff to add.
Mark, did you like Farhan roll a bunch of different characters though, or did you kind of just roll and stick with one? Because usually you're like a one-tune kind of guy. You just go engineer, Macari, done.
I did try out everything to try to see what I wanted to play, because like in a lot of MMOs, I beta test almost everything that's out there, right? I usually get in at some point in time in closed beta, and I make the mistake of saying, oh, this is the tune I want to play, so I'm not going to play that one, and I'll play everything else. So for this time, I played every single thing, and like I said, I was going to go in and be warrior, and I was really happy with that. Stalker is really a lot of fun, but once the engineer was kind of released in this beta, and we got a chance to check it out, I was just like, wow, that's kind of the tune that I think, as of right now, unless something changes, that's what I'm going to make my main, and it's for all the reasons I've already said. So I definitely recommend, and there's a lot of people in beta. It's not like most betas where like everything's dead. They're letting a lot of folks in. If you have not gotten in yet, don't worry, you will probably get in because they're going to let a lot more people in. But the thing is I played a bunch of different things, and I changed my mind for the first time ever. And I was like, hey, I guess I'm an engineer. I'm a range tank. So it's awesome.
All right, so tell me a little bit about you both went mostly with Macari, but you tried everything.
Actually, I've been playing Draken Stalker more often. I mean, I did create the Macari as my first one. That was like my big thing. I sort of did the randomized get in the game thing for the Draken though.
Tell me a little bit about the like the introduction, the Newbie Island tutorial, whatever you want to call it, area where you're learning the game, getting the story kind of out there, learning what's going on. How did it feel? I mean, was it pretty well fleshed out, really easy to understand? Good tutorial, bad tutorial? What did you think, Farhan?
Okay, so I have like two sets of impressions, right? Because there's Dominion and Exile, and their arc ships are rather different. Okay, so the Dominion arc ship, I thought it was cool, but it's a little bit weird to me that what the content is, right? So like once you get down in there, they basically start you off as you're like this agent for the Emperor, and you're sort of trying to root out some exile influences from the ship, and they're training you to fight the exiles. That's like the whole theme of the arc ship, is that you are trying, spoiler alert, you're trying to be against the exiles, right? But trying to put myself in the shoes of someone who hasn't followed this game religiously for like half a year, right? Oh, or almost 1 year now, actually. Then it's a little bit weird, because like the very first thing that the very, very first quest that you get is like you like walk into this little like interrogation machine, and it starts asking you questions about like, do you like to eat brains? It's like, no, I'm not a zombie. No, thank you. Like Mordesh kind of thing. Or have you been influenced by them? Like, oh, do you like furry plants and animals, or furry animals and plants? Furry plants. And so it's a little bit odd, just like right from the start, that they're already like sort of putting that stuff in there. And it doesn't really matter what you push; you can sort of just keep moving on and getting through there. But like just thematically, like I didn't think that it really set up properly why the Dominion might fight the exiles. And I think that like if they just like rolled even like obviously I think it would be better if they came up with their own cinematic just for right before character creation. Like, okay, you select Dominion, and then it gives you like a little cinematic showing who the Dominion is, and like why they are such assholes or whatever.
That's a technical term.
Right. I mean, okay, like I talked about this a lot on the stream. Like, why are the Dominion like the way they are? They have like the whole birthright thing going on, right? They were the chosen ones by the Elden, and I think that they have a legit claim to that because of that. But that's not at all obvious from the arc ship, and I think that that's something that maybe if they had like a little cinematic during character creation, that it would make it a little bit more obvious, and then it'd be a little bit more acceptable. Then that would be all right. It's also a little bit slower than the Exile arc ship.
What do you think, Mark? Do you think players want that extra added info, or do you think they just want to get to start hitting some buttons and start shooting at some stuff quicker, as fast as possible?
So it really depends is the answer. For folks who just want to start leveling, it's a distraction. However, the reason why it's not unbearable is because it's really not that long. And you can click through a lot of the stuff if you're not interested in it. For people who care, for people who are the achievers, people who want to know all about the lore, it's one of those things that it just pops up there and you can sit there and read it. There are things to click on like books and other things that will pop up with this information. So again, as you're running through trying to get off of the arc ship onto playing, start cracking heads, you can collect all these things because it's just a right click, and then you keep on moving, and it's in your codex, so you can read it later should you care, or you could sit there and read it right then. Again, the option's yours, and like I said, there's not so much of it that it's a distraction. A lot of other games, they make it ridiculous, and they kind of force you to go through it, or they give you some kind of quiz as part of your quest chain. this is really, really cool. It's there if you care, but you can collect it and read it later, or you can just completely ignore it and just keep on going down the line. Very, very few of the missions of the quests are like Farhan was saying, where it's going to give you some kind of quiz or interactive part, to the point that it's like a negative, because again, you can
maybe it's jarring though, because it's the very first thing that you do right as you start the thing. Like the very first thing you do, you talk to a Makari thing, even if you're like not really reading too much. You're like, okay, they're gonna see if I've been influenced by the exiles. All right, you go into the thing, and then they start popping you up with little. It's like prompts that come up, like yes or no questions, and it's just sort of like.
But I think you got. I think we also have to remember that the main reason for these areas are always for the MMO veteran, like people watching this show and you guys, like you could pretty much skip all of this stuff and probably figure out what you need to do like by yourself within 10 minutes. But for the average person, they really need to step them through and like show them, hey, this is what a quest dialog box looks like, and here's how you're gonna click on things, and you're gonna use these buttons to open and close these things. So that's really what usually these areas are for.
Yeah, I mean, the good thing about it, too, is just like you said, the majority of people, especially the people who watch this show, the people who watch this show are like a cut above your average MMO player because, they're going to give a crap enough to actually track and see what's going on and try to find out information. But the thing is this game is just different enough that you're going to get your ass kicked from 1 to 10 if you don't take just a little bit of time to try to figure things out. And
maybe like 3 to 10. Not 1 to 3 is.
Okay,
you can send in the telegraphs all you want.
But
it's all right.
All right, but my point, yes, you're right. But my point is just the fact that it's just different enough that you got to kind of pay attention, because if you go running in there alt tabbing, thinking that no matter where you move yourself, that your tune is just going to auto aim at stuff while you're strafing, that ain't happening. I couldn't tell you the amount of times I miss attacks because I sneezed, the guy moved out the way, I'm old and I can't maneuver fast enough. I mean, you've got to line up your attack and make sure that your enemy is within that telegraph. Otherwise, you will literally watch your bullet fly and dude move out the way, and you just missed your ultimate attack. And now you've got to strafe and try to keep alive long enough to set that up again. So it will definitely change the paradigm in the fact that it's kind of like Smite in terms of the gameplay enough that, it's interactive. Healing, I don't want to jump ahead, but I guess what I'm trying to say is like healers who have always felt that you were marginalized and always felt that you didn't have enough to do, oh my God, raids and just serious grouping, you will now have to play for your life. Not in a negative way, but you're going to definitely be engaged. You're definitely going to have to work to heal people. I mean, it's going to change things enough that it's going to kind of, not change the paradigm, not kill WoW, but move the genre forward just enough to be like, having a new dialogue and saying new things about just where can we go with the MMO space, right?
So how long does the sort of newbie experience last if you're playing it at a normal sort of pace? Is it like a 10-15 minute kind of scenario and then you're finally into the open world?
I would expect 1 to 3 on your first time through, especially if you're actually taking the time to read the prompts or something. I would say that that's maybe a little bit short of an hour or so.
And so that's even before you're even into an
Nexus.
area on Nexus. You're just in the.
I mean, there is a little bit of combat on there. Like for the Dominion, they have like this training facility where you're sort of training fighting holograms of exiles, and it's actually sort of funny because it's like all super propagandized. Like they're like, oh, the Mordish holograms are like trying to get your brains literally, and the RN are like, oh, we love trees or whatever. It's just like super over the top. Like, oh, the exiles are lame. The exile human exile mobs are literally called bumpkins. That is like their term. So, as you're fighting them, so yeah, there is a little bit of combat in there. I don't want to belabor like the 1 to 3 part too much about like me saying that the Dominion side feels a little bit weird, but I just meant specifically in comparison to the exile sets. I didn't talk about that, and the exile arc ship is a lot more cinematic of an experience, and not only because it literally has much more cinematics. Like, it literally has cinematics that are, like, in-game in the engine, that way you're talking about that. I don't know if that's something that's going to come in for the Dominion more. I'm not really sure where they would fit in, first of all, but like maybe that's something that's in development. But like the Exile, like it actually has a storyline. You sort of like are on the Exile arc ship, and it looks like junk. Like it's literally duct taped together. I mean, literally there is duct tape holding this arc ship together. And but then they get attacked by the Dominion, and you sort of have like this visceral. Okay, we're fighting to protect the ship as it's being attacked by real things, as opposed to like, okay, we're just learning about evil exiles and fighting holograms. So I think that the Dominion 1 to 3 experience, for people who actually care about the lore, I think it could be improved a little bit. But the Exile one is actually pretty awesome, I think.
It's very well written. I mean, Pappy and all the folks who do the writing for the game, it's really good. I mean, I got into almost an argument. I said some stuff I probably regret talking to Larry Everett about 2 weeks ago. And just talking about this versus like Tor lore, and it's not like Star Wars where it's got 30, almost 40 years worth of lore behind it, and a cubic metric crap ton of good authors who've added on to it, right? With all their different books. I mean, this is some stuff. What the heck is Chad Moore? Is that the guy's name?
Mm-hmm. Pappy.
Yeah, this is some stuff that he's put together with his team, and they've written some interesting stuff that's completely new, that's completely original. Nothing in sci-fi is going to be completely original ever again after Star Trek and Star Wars. There's going to always be something that you can, in your mind, say, "Oh, well, this is from that." Okay, whatever, guy. But the point is it's very well written, and I challenge people to play both sides just to see how they could come up with interesting stories, as opposed to like a Tor or Guild Wars or something where what you're getting when you go into it. I mean, they have some interesting dialogues, but the one thing I definitely want to add, though, because you keep saying the 1 to 3 and the 3 to 10, people out there who are MMO players who think that you're going to be level 50 in like 2 days, that shit ain't happening, bro.
It's gonna be a while longer.
This game, it's not hard in the fact that it sucks, or it's not hard in the fact that it's annoying or it's frustrating. It takes a while to level in this game. I just want you to know. I mean, it takes days and days to get to a decent level, and it doesn't force you because you can solo, but it really is advantageous to try to find groups to level with, because you will see the XP flow. If you're out there and you find yourself leveling solo, you will find yourself in a state of analysis paralysis, where you're trying to figure out what's the next best mission to take, and you're just wondering why you're still level 9, like 2 hours later.
Can I talk about just like the normal questing, like at on the planet now? Can we go to that part?
Please do so.
So, I just want to bring this up because specifically, like when I want to talk a little bit of story and lore and stuff before we just go insane into the gameplay and everything. When you're on the planet, especially from level 6 or 7 or so, so the very first part on the planet is at level 3 to 6, but that's still instance. You're sort of like off on your own thing, and it's a very linear directed experience, like you expect in most current MMOs that have traditional questing, right? You pick up the quest, you go to the next thing, you pretty much follow a line through the zone. Maybe it's not a direct line, but it sort of curls around, but it's still a linear experience for the most part. Like very obvious what you do first and then next. You hit level 6 and you go into this zone. You're gonna have usually okay. I haven't actually played the Exile zone, so I'm not 100% sure about those. But the Dominion zones, at least, once you get there at level 6. You are usually in a town that is either like right damn in the middle of the zone, or like at least sort of middling in the zone, and there's quests everywhere. Like there's stuff here, there's stuff here, there's stuff here, and it's almost overwhelming. Like the amount of content that's in, especially that zone that's right afterward, and a lot of people sort of get overwhelmed.
Key word is the amount of quests is almost overwhelming.
Yeah. Like you'll be at like I'm playing at 1080p resolution, and so like my quest tracker is on the side of the bar. The whole thing is full. I have a scroll bar to go through because I picked up all those quests or something like that, and it's overwhelming. And especially if you're trying to like get through the quests, like honestly, if I was gonna say one thing that the game needs work on the most, and I've been saying this like all weekend, like through streaming, it's the user interface. Like they need to make it a lot more friendly and a lot more obvious, and that's something that they are working on. But you have got so many quests that are going on in there that it's just bombarding you. And like if you're just sort of trying to sort of pick up quests, then a lot of time the story doesn't seem coherent. And the reason for that is this: there's two basic kinds of quests in WildStar. There's episode quests, so there's like they'll have the exclamation mark over the head of the NPC with a little blue hexagon behind it. And then there are standard quests that just have an exclamation mark. They call them tasks. Task quests are like one-off missions. Like they tell you, go kill some stuff, go pick up some stuff, whatever. They don't have much, continuity between one quest to the next or whatever. It's just like this one-off little task. That's why they call them tasks. The episode quests are where you have your continuity. You have your stories being told for the zone, mini stories. There's, for example, for the Draken in Dune, there's a storyline that follows this mercenary Granok that's been terrorizing and sort of fighting with the Draken leader of that outpost for like a long time, and so you try to track him down and do this whole thing with him. And those are the quests that are actually really interesting and fun. There's task quests that go along with it. If you just pick up every quest right at the start, you've got like maybe 3 different tasks or episodes and their associated tasks going on there. You start doing them, and it seems like there's no continuity or no coherence between one quest to the next, and that's because, well, there isn't, right? You're doing a task for this episode, and then you're doing a quest for that episode, or you're actually doing the episode quest. You start to forget what happened in that one, and like that's, I think, largely a UI messaging thing. Like it's not obvious that, okay, I should focus on one episode, get it done, maybe do the tasks that are associated with it, and then after I'm done with that episode, okay, if I didn't actually like those task quests, just abandon them, because there's so much content in this game. You don't have to do all of the little quests, the task quests. They're there for supplementary experience while you're in the area, but don't feel like you're chained down to that area by doing that, or that, okay, you need to pick up every single quest that you can possibly see and then try to make this loop around the zone or whatever. That's not the best way to play WildStar when you're doing questing.
So what is the best way to level given the system right now relative to what you understand from 1 to 15?
I don't necessarily. I think that's still like the most efficient way to level, just because that's the least travel time kind of way. But I think the most fun way to level, and the way that you'll actually appreciate the stories that are going on and everything, is to pick an episode, do the tasks that are associated with that episode. I think that they need to do a better way of calling out which tasks are linked to which episodes are like in the same area. Right now, it's just like the task tracker is completely random. Like it's just everything. There's no alphabetical order. There's no map location order. I mean that's something that they're going to work on. They're going to fix. But once that's sure, then you do that episode. If you're enjoying that episode, then keep doing it. Do your task quests, finish the episode up, and then that should be your gameplay unit, right? If you want to keep playing the game, go on to another episode or do some PvP or do something else. Otherwise, that's a good stopping point.
So in 30 words or less, what's the difference between an episode quest and your regular quest that you get from like an NPC or a task quest?
Right. So the episode quest has continuity. It's trying to tell you a story. Sometimes there's a cinematic associated with it. Task quests don't. They're just one-off, kill stuff, do something, and that's what overwhelms a lot of players. They just pick up every task, and then they're everywhere. I think that was more than 30 words. Oh well.
So Mark, did you not find this problem at all while you were playing, or were you just sort of going wherever it took you?
I totally was that dumbass who grabbed every single quest and was going all around trying to do every single quest. And you get to a point where you have what we call, at least in the IT field, or especially when you're going after business, is analysis paralysis. So you've got a billion quests, and you're sitting there looking at your quest log trying to figure out, like, okay, well, which one do I do next? And the UI is not optimized. The UI is the one complaint that everyone in the streams that I've seen has. And so what they need to do, just like Farhan said, is they need to take a look at A, fixing the UI, making it smaller, making it more modular, but B, coming up with a user feedback loop that provides you information, and the way I would do it is to say, if I'm in this zone, if I'm in this area, these are the quests that are in the area that I am in.
So you would do it by geographic location and a radius of distance.
Correct, because like I'm here, what are the quests I can do here? Because like let's say I'm in the left part of the zone. I'm just making it up.
I guess it would be really nice if there was a couple different ways to filter that and sort that, right? Because you might look at it like that, where somebody else might look at it like
Yes.
far and say, like, I want to go on this story sort of scenario, and I want to go down this path, and it may take me out of this area. You know what? I'm willing to just leave this area and kind of go to the next area. But if you don't know, if you're not being pointed in the right direction, you're going to get into a little bit of a snag.
No, that's exactly right. So the point is like maybe I'm just dumb. I don't know, but just tell me what is it that's in this area that I should be doing? Because what can happen, and what happens to me all the time is, let's say I go to the west part of the map. I finished, the episode quest, or I finished, the consecutive quest. Well, now, like, I'm trying to figure out, okay, well, what's the next quest to do? And in the next quest, if I look at my bar, okay, I'm level 12. This is level 12. I go all the way to the other side of the map to do the other quest, when there was like maybe another quest that was maybe to the north or closer. But the point is just fix that part, make that a little bit more continuous. That's my big word of the day, and make it so that I don't feel like I'm zigzagging, because that's my big complaint about Final Fantasy. I really liked Final Fantasy Online at whatever 14 it just came out. I even liked the combat in terms of the, it's old school, right? So I could appreciate it. But my complaint about it was I felt like I was going all the way across the zone and all the way back. And then, NPCs were like, no, you didn't really do it. Go do it again. And then you go all the way back. And I just felt like I was spending more time traveling than I was fighting. And so to a small extent, you can do that to yourself in this game if you don't realize the hierarchy or the importance of the difference in the types of the quests. Because, like I said, most MMOs, heck, even in Final Fantasy, you can run out of quests, especially if you have alts, and then you have to do, or not alts, but, alternate classes, and then you have to just fate grind, right? That sucks. In this game, you got no shortage of quests. If you have no quests, you've completed all your quests, you'll be walking through a zone and you will get a telephone call or whatever, and someone will be like, hey, I got some more quests for you, and you can do this and this and this, and so you do not have to worry about running out of content in this game. But the point is how do I burn through that content in an efficient manner so that I'm not wasting my time doing it inefficiently or just being dumb by zigzagging because I'm making poor choices. I think these are the things that over time, as we live stream more in beta, as we learn, as we talk, as they evolve, these are gonna be the things that are gonna separate those server first guilds or people from those who are not. And it's not gonna necessarily be because they were better at raiding or not. It's gonna be because they were more able to efficiently figure out how to get XP, how to knock out the quests, how to go to places to get the gear to get you to where you need to go. And that's a good problem to have.
Well,
Devs,
so this is why
devs would hate you. I have to think that devs probably hate people who want to just like burn through the content to do like server first. They're probably like, screw those guys. No, they're probably, we don't want to get server first. Just play our damn game.
So this is why I think that the questing issue though is a UI issue. Is that so I've gone through the 1 to 15 content like a lot of times. Like I've had to delete characters that reached character max and then redo it again. And like I've gone through with the Stalker, like I love the Stalker so much I've actually gone 1 to 15 like almost 3 times now. One of them isn't quite 15 yet, but
no life, no job.
But the thing is, this is my point. Is like the first time takes a long time because you're like dealing with it. You don't know where to go. The quests are sort of like leading you everywhere. But once I knew, okay, these are episode quests. This is what it is, and that actually took me like 2 characters to actually even recognize that there was this blue hexagon behind the exclamation mark. And that was a different kind of quest. I didn't even notice that. I was just clicking on stuff and going through. I didn't have any idea the first time through. But yeah, that's why it's a UI messaging thing. But then on the subsequent playthroughs, it was a lot faster. I knew where to go. It was like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. Oh, okay, I'm done with that episode. I didn't finish this task quest. Maybe it's bugged. Maybe I just don't like it, whatever. I'm just going to abandon it. Keep going. and I got through the content so much faster on those subsequent playthroughs, and it was just way more fun. And that's why I think it's just a messaging issue. It's like people don't know how to play WildStar because you don't play it in exactly the same way that you played every other traditional questing thing. Okay, yeah, there are exclamation marks everywhere, but that doesn't mean that, okay, I saw an exclamation mark out in the distance on my map, I'm going to go over there, because and maybe this is a problem with some of the quest design is they have so much content, but it's sort of running into each other, right? Like, this quest hub is right next to the other quest hub. Not like literally, but like in enough range that when you open up your map, you can see the exclamation marks from the next quest hub. And so a lot of times people will be like, oh, I'm just going to pick up all of them. And then their quest tracker is so big, the quest tracker has bugs where it's randomized. You can't even see exactly which order that they're in. So it becomes a mess. Yeah, I mean, okay, I'm just going to say this. If they don't fix that quest tracker, I'm going to be looking into ways to fix it myself because it's a UI issue. That's a
Gamebreaker Nation app. First one, going to be ripped.
You know what? Because that's a mod issue. That is a mod thing.
It's a Gamebreaker Nation app. Just say it. It's a Gamebreaker mod. Gamebreaker mod. Now, just say it.
And I mean, like, I don't know why it is that is specific. I think that a lot of the things is that they've changed the way that questing works so much. Like we saw that huge blog post where they were talking about, okay, we're changing quest to be percentage wise instead of numbers so that experience matters. And there's bugs with that. They're still working it out. Maybe that's part of the reason why the quest tracker is not really fitting exactly with the way that gameplay should be played to have maximum fun. But I'm like 99% sure that that's something that they're going to work on. They're going to fix that UI. They're going to make it a lot more obvious because they know that that's the issue. Everyone is telling them that, this is sort of overwhelming. Maybe they can't analyze exactly why, but they just know I'm being overwhelmed. And like another thing is that like whenever you accept a quest, there's like 4 dialogue boxes that open up. There's like your responses in one window. There's what the NPC is saying in another window. There's like this, so it is overwhelming. You end up wanting to just click through the quest because there's too many windows showing every info all over your screen. And then you click through all the quests and you realize you have no idea what you just accepted. So yeah.
UI confusion. All right, so let's talk about like actually the quest though a little bit. Like I want to get a sense and a feel for just how engaging is the questing. Is it a lot of just trash quests of kill 10 rats, FedEx this normal stuff we're used to in MMOs, or is it a bit more story driven, engaging, kind of really sucking you into the story? I mean, obviously with the episode and sort of the task stuff, barring that aside, knowing which route to go down, if they were to fix that, how would you kind of rate their questing? Because they opted to go with, the Twitter style, as they called it, of questing, where everything is just super short, right? There's just not a lot of context to what you're doing.
Right. So I think this sort of depends on a zone-by-zone basis. So I only have experience with the Dominion zones from 6 to 15 or so. I haven't done that on Exiles yet. But for the Dominion, at least, I mean, the objectives of what they asked you to do, okay, yeah, those are kill whatever percentage. I mean, they don't have the number anymore, but it's percent of this kind of mob, like maybe mercenaries, kill a bunch of mercenaries, kill a bunch of these animals or whatever. Like, that is pretty standard fare. Now, if you actually pay attention to what the episodes are asking you to do, then you start to get a little bit of the lore behind it. And like, so for Dehradun, the big orange zone that we keep seeing, that zone is all about the Draken. So they have a lot of hunting going on. There's a couple episodes that are about so like the Draken, I guess, have banned this necromantic magic kind of thing, black magic or whatever. And one of them wants to. There's some natives to Dehradun, the Moody's, who practice that magic, and so one of the Draken sort of gets like, oh, this is so much power, why aren't we using it? We should just do it, and so forth. And so you sort of like have this go back and forth of, okay, helping them inadvertently and doing this other stuff. That's not completely obvious because of UI issues, and I think that people don't understand that, okay, there is a purpose to me killing all these animals and doing these things. There are a couple sort of weaker episodes in Dehradun, just like Chua are attaching random like mechanical constructs onto animals, and then you have to kill them. Like, okay, why did the Chua even put a laser on that tiger? But hey, who am I to doubt the Chua? And then, but they do have other ones. So like there's like this race of bird people that the Cassians and Makari are trying to recruit into the Dominion, not as like a full-on race, but like as almost like a slave race. And obviously they don't like the idea of that, and so you sort of have this dynamic of you sort of finding out, okay, how some of these highborn Cassians think, versus like what the natives want and other stuff like that. And I think that they've been pretty engaging and interesting, but the actual quest content, like the gameplay of it, that completely hinges on the combat gameplay being fun. And I think it is, like telegraphs and moving around. Like, okay, maybe you have to kill 10 mobs here, and then another quest later on will also ask you to kill about 10 mobs, another type, but the telegraphs that they're doing are completely different. So the gameplay itself actually plays differently, even though you are just still killing mobs. Maybe those mobs are doing like frontal cone attacks. Maybe another time they've got all these crazy lines and things that you have to dodge around. Maybe there's environmental hazards. There's all kinds of stuff. Again, it's layered content. Maybe if you look at it in its simplicity, like if you just look at the quest and try to analyze it, then yeah, it seems simple, but there's these layers of things that are going on while you're playing it that actually still make it, when you're actually playing it, it's fun. And I think that's what matters most.
Mark, you're usually just a click-through kind of guy, aren't you? Like, you usually don't pay too much attention to the quests, if I remember right. What'd you find yourself doing in WildStar? Kind of more of the same, or did you actually were you taking the time to kind of check them out and read them?
Click through.
There you go.
Why lie?
Why lie?
I rant so that I can make up for
know
Mark.
that. I mean, I think they know that. You know that's why they've gone with the shorter quest text anyway, and the 140 count like a Twitter. They kind of know that the majority of MMO players are doing that.
But I'll be honest though, it's not because I don't care about the lore. It's because I'm in beta. So A, I'm trying to not burn myself out. B, when I live stream, when I do videos, when I do stuff with the guild, I'm not that guy who's going to be all up in all the lore. I'm not a min-maxer. So Farhan and I are different from that in that regard. What I'm into is I'm like, well, what's the guild management system? What's the social construct? What is the fun aspect? So I click through that just so I can get to a certain level so that I can get with my folks and concentrate on different things. I respect all that. And sometimes, not all the times, I'll read through that like with alts, right? But my concern is guild management, which I hope we'll talk about later, and all the stuff for raiding and organized PvP and stuff like that. Like I will consult a person in my guild or like a person like Farhan who has all that stuff so I can unscrew my build so I can optimize my build, but I am never going to be that guy who's going to figure it out by himself just because either I'm dumb or I don't have the time or I just don't get it, or I'm too lazy.
All right, so let's talk to you about then. Let's talk about combat now. So questing, the combat has been the big thing, obviously. The telegraph system, the big new addition to the MMO genre. I don't know now that Mark, now that you've kind of had some time with it and playing with it, how engaging is it? How much does it add to the type of gameplay that we've been used to for MMOs for years?
I can't go back now because having played it here and there with before when I was playing Final Fantasy and I even was playing Tour again. We were trying to raid. I keep trying to double click to dodge out of the way of stuff. So it's so and it's kind of like, and I've never taken an illegal drug in my life, but from talking to people who have, it's like a drug habit that just kind of came on and you didn't know you were addicted to it. And because I didn't notice I was addicted, I was thinking that I was going to not like the fact that I had to double click to jump out of the way of stuff. But like once you start doing it, it's adding those Twitch features from like, FPS games or whatever that now I can't go back. And that's good and it's bad, right? It's great because it's helping me move forward in this game. But now I wish all the other games do it because there's nothing as satisfying. Like, I'll give you a case in point. In beta, I had my level, 7 or 8 stalker, and I went up against like a level 13 or something, 14, some big robot mech mob. And yeah, it leveled me like 5 or 6 levels. And I was able to outmaneuver him and kill him and take him down. There's no MMO ever that I know of that I could ever take in a mob that was that many levels out. And it wasn't because I was DPSing him or I was kicking his ass because I was barely holding on the entire time. But the point is that I had the option to see a telegraph and I could double click out the way. And so essentially I dodge tanked it enough so that I could just continue and perpetuate the fight. And I eventually outlasted him and I DPSed him down and I killed him. And I was like I haven't had a fulfilling moment like that in a long time in an MMO, and I got that in beta. So I'm just trying to say, like, that ability to just dodge, to avoid an attack, that's irresistible. And now I think that I'm spoiled in many ways for many other games. So yeah, it's changed my life in MMOs for a lot.
What about you, Farhan?
I guess so. I would say like two main things in addition to what Mark says, because I agree with them completely on just telegraph making the combat more engaging. First of all, just to address the people who, haven't played the game yet and just think telegraph's going to make the game easy mode. Like, not to just say it doesn't, but just when, it's easy to say, okay, just get out of the red and do it, but the problem is, okay, get out of the red, conserve your dash charges so that, you're using it intelligently, when you actually need to get out of the red, or just moving out of it normally, or using an ability maybe that moves you out of it, and actually still doing your role while you're fighting. And that's the big difference. Is okay, yeah, it's easy to just say get out of the red, but can you still do your DPS? Can you still do your heals? Can you still do your tank while you're doing that? And that's where the combat suddenly becomes way more engaging. Is that you're good?
I was going to say, on top of that, the red follows you sometimes. It's not
yes.
It's not one of these things where, if you've looked at the live streams, where it's just there goes a pyramid of red that just dropped around you, and so double click twice and you dash out of it. No, sometimes the red is a red circle around you, and as you move, run, haul ass, double click out the way, guess what? The red is still around you. So you have to figure out ways to get out of that. Sometimes you have to double click, dash, and then double click dash again to get back out of it. Or sometimes the red is so big that you're effed. You're not getting out of that. You're sucking up.
Yeah, I think what the concern for a lot of players is, like, in chat room, somebody saying, like, the way you describe it, it does make it, without playing the game, it makes the game sound like it might be easy mode. And I think that's the fear for some players, is that it's going to be too easy.
It is not.
With your story of saying, hey, I was able to take down this massive mob that I should not have been able to take down, but because they telegraphed me around, I was able to actually maneuver my way and still do it. You're saying it's fun, but people's concern is that, does that mean that it makes the game too easy?
So it depends on the mob, right? That mob just happened to have what I would call static telegraphs, where it's a geographical placement on the ground, and I can look at it, and I know that I can get out of it. Other mobs, as you're leveling, will drop, like I was just saying, they'll drop telegraphs that are around you. So no matter where you are, you are at the center of that telegraph, right? Like Arrow Wolf is saying, that's what Mike Joseph from what WildStar fans, dodge, dip, dive, duck, and dodge. You're doing every single thing that you can to get away from it, and it's still on you. So it just depends on the mob, and it depends on the telegraph capability that they have. This particular mob that I fought just happened to have what I call the static telegraphs. It's a geographic pattern on the ground, and I was able to stay out of it. Had at any point in time another roaming mob or a pat or some other group of mobs that I'd run into been around, I'd have been done. Had I not been on my game that particular moment, I would have been done. So I'm just trying to say, like, I made it sound easy for the fact that I overcame, but think about it. I am telling you how epic an experience it was at level 8 to beat a mob at level 8, son. Think about that. I am boasting about being level 8 and beating a mob. That's how hard this game is. Okay?
But I mean, the telegraph system is deeper than that anyway, right? Like for the players who are concerned about, okay, the skill cap's going to be lower because, okay, yeah, that's very fun and impressive, especially the first time you do it. But then, okay, like the next time you do it, okay, yeah, you know the telegraph, you get out of the red, okay, whatever, it's easy. Again, it's because of everything else that's involved while you're doing the fight. Telegraphs, all that they change is the messaging. I mean, like WildStar is a harder game than most other MMOs. But that's just tuning, right? Obviously, they could make World of Warcraft harder if they just made the mobs hit a lot harder. It's just, but could you actually overcome that with skill? Is the thing, and I mean, they could have, a lot of raid fights in World of Warcraft or other games actually have basically the equivalent of a telegraph. They have a thing on the ground that you have to get rid out of. Usually fire, right? Get out of the fire. Now it's get out of the red telegraph. But the point is, can you actually still do the aiming of WildStar combat? Can you actually still do the management of your limited action set while you're doing that?
Farhan,
did you bring in the right stuff?
In chat, so basically in chat, what they're saying is, well, if it's a red thing on the ground, you just jump out of it. And I guess, and add to this, the thing is it's easier said than done. Normally, you only have 2 charges, which will allow you to dodge 2 times. So if depending on when they've dropped that telegraph, you might be out of charges, or you might only have 1 charge to do only 1 dodge, and as opposed to a double jump to get out of it. So the timing is going on, just like Farhan said, in addition to the fact that, oh, by the way, you're fighting, you're shooting, or you're trying to kill something, right? So you're trying to put DPS on this guy, and you're trying to dodge out the way, and you're trying to keep aggro if that's your role, and you're trying to also make sure that his telegraph doesn't, or and I'm saying he using masculine, trying his telegraph doesn't force you into leaping into another bunch of mobs or a pat or any other thing, right? So it being in a perfect world, if you're just like in the middle of an area where it's just you and that other bot or mob, that's one thing. But remember, it's an MMO, so there's bunches of crap for you to jump into or get run into or what have you. And oh, by the way, you can get stunned, which now means that the telegraph hits you or any other kind of number of things, right? Oh, right. And oh, by the way, you can just screw up. You can fat finger. You can hit the wrong button. You can miss.
Yeah, and even in the midst of all of that, like, there's still more to it that's going on even on top of that, because, okay, now you have, okay, get out of the red. Then you also have, aiming your own telegraphs and maximizing the amount of damage so you hit multiple mobs, or you're doing whatever it is that you're needing to do. You have to manage, maybe some of you have long telegraphs and sometimes you have some short telegraphs on your action set. Can you actually use all of those abilities effectively? So you have all of that, but then you also have this another second layer of strategy, and I think that this is something that a lot of people who haven't actually played the game and thought about it, and this is something where I'm like 100% sure that this will be really important in raids down the line, because it's just so obvious, and they're already doing it in questing in 1 to 15, is that telegraphs give you a lot of precision about exactly where things are aligned, right? Telegraph is here, this is exact angle that this thing is laid out at, this is everything. And a lot of times a mob will chain telegraphs, right? In PvE, it's a scripted event, right? You have scripts that say, okay, the boss does this, and then it does this, and then it does this, or the mob, or whatever it is. If you have, okay, this telegraph is lined up exactly like this in this cone, right? Maybe that boss always follows up this conal attack with a circular telegraph that's offset to the side or whatever. If you know that, then you know ahead of time, just from seeing this telegraph, I don't want to stand over here afterward. And maybe that telegraph isn't something you can dodge out of. It's so quick that you're just going to get hit by it if you happen to stand there. That's something that you need to have raid awareness then. You need to know, okay, beyond just get out of the red, you need to know where is the next telegraph going to land. You need to know, should I be standing there, should I not be standing there? Sometimes it'll be a buff. Maybe you actually do want to stand in that spot afterward. And so it just deepens the messaging. It makes it so that the content designers can actually make harder and harder, more complicated, more interesting boss fights that engage you in ways that you actually have to know exactly how this boss fight works in order to actually pull it off, to get the buffs, to get the debuffs or whatever, avoid the damage or soak the damage, and whatever the case is, it just makes the messaging so much more clear that they can actually tune that content and people can actually pull it off afterward. Because there's no excuse for saying, oh, I didn't know that that thing was going to be there. Well, you should have, because the thing is on the ground. And that also makes it so that you're not going to beat every raid boss or every dungeon boss or every whatever, even mob, the first time through, because the first time through you have to see where all those telegraphs are. That's the learning experience that is deepened in this game compared to maybe another game that doesn't have that kind of clear messaging because, you know, you didn't learn, okay, oh, this telegraph is going to happen. I need a pre-position over here because there's no way I'm going to be able to dodge it. Or even if I did, then I wasted my dash charge. And so the combat gameplay is actually a lot deeper once you're actually playing it, once you're actually thinking about what they can actually do with the combat system.
So it sounds like you guys like the combat. Sounds like you guys like the combat. Really good before we move on out of the combat. I'm wondering, like, how do you guys think? I mean, we've seen some action combat games before. We've seen Terra. We've seen some others come along, you know, trying to push the envelope in the MMO genre of what combat can be like. Does it compare to anything else on the market, or do you feel like with the telegraph system, it's just something completely new?
I mean, I don't know many games that have a telegraph per se, but
no, but I'm lumping it more just with an action combat set.
In terms of the action combat, Smite is what everyone's saying is the closest to it. And that's not even an MMO, but in terms of just the action combat, it's like Smite.
Right.
So if you want to practice, play Smite.
That is a good way to practice just because you have like the limited number of buttons and the sort of setup is similar. But just to compare it to the other MMOs, like if I wanted to compare it to Terra, you don't have the same kind of animation issue that isn't as important as it was in Terra, for example, for WildStar's combat. The animations aren't as key to reacting and to doing stuff. It's more about knowing what the fight is, knowing how telegraphs are shaped and aiming, rather than it being about the react to the animation in a split second kind of thing. To compare to Guild Wars had the targeted combat so that it would auto-aim for you. I know that this is something that's come up in chat a few times and that is a little bit controversial. They have an option in the game in the combat settings that you can have tab targeting. Basically, it'll center your telegraph on that target and it'll track them. Like, you know, you won't miss your telegraph because it's centered on them. And just to address that, I hope, I'm desperately hoping that they actually remove that from the game. I understand the purpose of it, you know, to help gamers who actually can't do that kind of movement to actually still enjoy the game. I just don't think it has a place in competitive PvE and PvP content. Where exactly that falls, you know, we'll end up seeing with Carbine. I'm going to just assume, though, that that's not going to be a factor in competitive PvE and PvP. And because the aiming is so key in this game. But to compare it to Guild Wars, though, you had like the targeting, and you could just not have a target and do your attacks and sort of do it. But again, that was more of okay, there's this animation, you're reacting to it. Dodging in PvP, comparing Guild Wars 2 to WildStar, it's harder to actually feel like you are actively avoiding the enemy or like outskilling them necessarily with that kind of attack. It's more about your build, your gear, your limited action set, and doing stuff because so the dash in WildStar, it's just a quick movement. And the movement's actually super, super important in WildStar. This is something that I don't know why they haven't done more billing on. They have a full physics engine that's being used for their movement. Like this is something, uphill combat, that is a thing in WildStar. Like, you move uphill slower than you go downhill. That is a thing, and I don't know why more people don't talk about it. But, I mean, anyway.
That's going to be, hold on, that's going to be very strategically huge for the 40-man Warplots.
Yeah.
So remember it now. Everybody who's talking about Warplots, you know, I was an officer in the Army, trust me, I understand about owning the strategic high ground. That will be very paramount to success in Warplots.
Exactly, but so what Dash does in WildStar is it lets you sort of ignore movement penalties. So you can sort of ignore the physics engine, sort of go up a hill that you shouldn't have been able to go up of. If you use Dash, you can, if you're snared, you can use Dash, you'll still have just as much movement. That movement is still very key in WildStar. Whereas in Guild Wars, dodging was more used for the invulnerability frame. You have like a few frames of invulnerability. You can avoid a CC, you can avoid attack or whatever by just dodging. Even if it would have hit you, you didn't quite dodge out of the way of it, but you had that invulnerability frame. WildStar has no invulnerability frames, you're just moving faster. So it's a very different kind of dodge or dash. So that would be how I would compare it to Guild Wars.
All right, still a lot to go over. Lot. But first, I want to tell you guys about a great deal we've got going on with Audible. If you guys have not checked out Audible, if you're like Farhan, you need to take a breather right now. Just calm down and maybe listen to an audiobook. I want to hook you guys up with a free 30-day trial and a free audiobook. All you have to do is use the URL audible.com/Gamebreaker. Sign up, make an account, download the app to your Android or iOS device. I'm going to take a listen to a classic Orson Scott Card book, First Meetings. Fantastic book.
There's this great big war out in space, said Andrew. Way above the sky. I know what space is, said John Paul impatiently. Okay, well, big war and all, so all the countries of the world have to work together and pay to build hundreds and hundreds of starships. So they put somebody called the hegemon in charge of the whole world, and the hegemon says we can't afford the problems caused by overpopulation, so any marriage that has more than 2 children is non-compliant. Andrew stopped as if he thought that made everything clear. But lots of families have more than 2 kids, said John Paul. Half their neighbors did. Because this is Poland, said Andrew, and we're Catholic. What? Does the priest give people extra babies? John Paul couldn't see the connection.
Check it out. First Meetings, part of the Under game series. Could be yours free right on Audible while you are waiting for the WildStar to launch. You need something to do. That's right. Catch up on some audiobooks, and I highly recommend First Meetings in the Enderverse by Orson Scott Card. And like I said, you can be downloading it absolutely free just by going and using the URL audible.com/Gamebreaker, audible.com/Gamebreaker. All right, what do you guys want to talk about now? I mean, you only got to level 15. Any, I want to stick on the PvE side first before we jump over to PvP. So what, any dungeons, any sort of dungeon raid type content to be seen at those levels?
The closest thing to like an instanced combat adventure thing was the ship hand, your favorite.
Oh yeah.
Oh yes, tell us about this. So what exactly are the ship hands?
It's just like a without sounding dumb, an instanced quest where the ones that I've been on, you basically, there's like an NPC sitting here by a ship in town, and you just go over there and you click on them and like, hey, you want to help me do X, Y, and Z that I'm trying to do, and you go off and you land or you dock on another ship or you go somewhere else, and you go through a quest, but now it's an instanced quest as opposed to an open world quest, and it was challenging. It was like, I guess analogous to what the heck are those little missions that you can do on tour or whatever. I can't even remember.
Well, what would you say? What does it seem like the main reason for them being instances? Is it a much more scripted, sort of story-driven environment?
It's to try to get you into the story. It's to try to get you into the lore. It's to try to get you into your faction, and it gives you the chance to kind of break just the gameplay up as to just doing the collection of open world quests and to do something instance. And it also gives you the chance to go do a group adventure together, as opposed to just trying to do all the open world quests. Because one thing that we noticed was, if you're grouping and you do an open world quest, it's on a quest by quest basis, as if if you can get group credit or not.
I think that's something that they're sort of tweaking though and tuning.
Right.
Like I bugged anything that didn't get shared properly. So.
Right. Whereas if you do like a ship hand, you're all getting credit for the mission, and then they have much harder mobs and like a boss than you would normally fight in open world. So it's like a little mini raid for like leveling.
It's also like, so it's more scripted. Like you have like a clear objective. Like, okay, go talk to him, and then it'll change something. Maybe you'll at one point in the first ship hand, you'll like go outside into space, like you're at like a mining colony, and so you have like lower gravity and kinds of things going on. And a little helmet on your character, which is pretty cool. It just looks awesome, especially on a Chua. Just giant helmet that's more than half of his body. But so you got that. But the other big thing, the reason why it's instant, especially compared to otherwise, would be that it scales, right? So if you take between 1 to 5 people into your ship hand together, it'll scale based on the number of players that you brought into the thing. So it's like a way for them. Hey, at least they have like that scaling technology. I don't know. I haven't actually tried it with differing numbers of players. I've only tried it with 1 or 2 players, and I didn't really see a huge significant difference. I noticed that it wasn't significantly easier with 2 players compared to 1 player. It was a little bit easier, but it wasn't like, oh, this is completely face roll now that I have 2 people here. So there is some sort of scaling that is making it. I haven't tried it with 5 yet to see what exactly that'll end up doing.
What did you guys think of them, though? I mean, did it really feel like it broke up the content a lot more and got a kind of really good addition to the game, getting it out of the outside world a little bit, kind of breaking that up?
So I needed it personally. I thought that it was really helpful. It was interesting to do something because, with and I go back to Tor because that was just probably the most recent MMO I really played a lot, other than Final Fantasy. It's the first time because in Tor you get used to doing a lot of instances, right? Mm-hmm. You don't do as many open world things, and this game is a really large open world. Like I haven't seen any phases going between zones at all, other than I'm leaving this continent, and you get on a plane or whatever, and you fly away. It's the first time that you feel like you're doing something that I don't have to worry about 6,000 other people rolling through while I'm shooting this mob, and actually that's kind of cool in a lot of ways because it makes you feel like the world is alive. But the thing is it's the only thing that makes you feel like, okay, this is my instant, this is my dungeon, and I'm going to take my time, and I'm going to set this up the way I want, or my group, or whatever, The instances are a very personal thing. So I thought that it broke up the pattern of the type of gameplay, and I just thought that it felt comfortable especially coming off of playing a lot of Tor.
Yeah, I think that the Carbine dev, so one of the content designers, I think Cadium, is how you pronounce it.
He's got her on speed dial.
But so she basically said that in one of the, I think she was in the chat room for the engineer live stream that happened this last weekend, and she said that the ship hands specifically are intended to be in each level bracket. So whatever your range is, I'm not sure exactly how large a bracket is considered, but I'm assuming that it correlates closely to the zones, maybe like every time you move to a higher level zone, maybe there would be a ship hand in each zone or something like that. So it is a way to just break up the content, give you a little bit of a different thing from whatever you're doing in that zone. Like if you're questing through Dune, like the orange train gets a little bit tiresome, and I mean there is some variety in there. Like you have like this termite kind of bug zone that you're sort of killing mobs in, I think that we're showing right now. And there is a part of Dune where the Auran have, blasphemously created plants and green life around the area, and so you have to go shut them down, kind of thing. So there is some variety within the zone itself, and but the ship hand specifically is a good way of breaking up that feeling of, okay, this is the snow zone, this is the orange zone or whatever, and giving you some content that feels very different.
All right, talk to me a little bit about like the just abilities in the skill system. I mean, last we saw, we only got that crazy web of a skill system. Yes. So talk to me about that a little bit. How does it come into play now that you've got a chance with it?
So amps are unlocked at level 6 specifically, but your general ability tiers, I think, as you're leveling up in the 1 to 15 range, you're only going to have, I think, 6 ability slots unlocked. So you don't have the full 8 yet, but you have 6 of them, so you can start to do some interesting, okay, I'm going to take these abilities and those abilities. Basically, the way that the abilities break down is every class has 30 total abilities, and I'm assuming that that's not going to change up till launch, that is sort of, they've locked down on that number specifically for launch. And those are categorized into 3 categories, 10 each, so there are 10 assault abilities, there's 10 support abilities, and there are 10 utility abilities. And you can mix and match between the different sets, but specifically, there's these two main secondary. There's these 2 big stats that are important for your assault versus support power. And depending, all of the assault abilities scale with assault power, and all your support abilities scale with support power. It's somewhat hard to actually have a lot of both of them without gimping the other stat a lot. So I'm not sure actually ability-wise how common it'll be for someone to go hybrid between assault and support, but you can at least have like a good set of probably around 15 to 20 for any given role abilities that you're going to choose from between assault and utility or support and utility. Maybe you'll mix in one or two abilities from between assault and support, but for the most part, I think most people are going to keep to that. Now, of course, I broke that rule on the live stream because I was playing a Spellslinger with like three assault, two support, and one utility because I like to roll like that, going different. But for the most part, I think people will sort of keep to whatever they're doing. And I think for most classes, there is a decent amount of variety. Warrior is a little bit lacking in variety. You're probably going to be very similar to other ones, at least from what you can see in 1 to 15. Medic is another one that doesn't have a ton of variety. But Spellslinger, that's a big one. I think you could have a lot of variety in there that I saw. Stalker, I think you could have. Well, I mean, Stalker, there's going to be like 3 or so abilities that you're going to always have, probably, but the rest of your action set, I could very easily see swapping things in and out and around. So, yeah, amps themselves actually don't seem as exciting and interesting as maybe the first thought would be. They're very small improvements. I think basically a single point of amp is balanced around like 1% assault power increase or something. So it's a very tiny increase that these things are balanced around. I don't know if that'll change with balancing in beta or whatever. Obviously, this is just about what the current status is. So each point doesn't necessarily feel all that significant. But if you sort of think about it at a higher level, a build isn't just your amp loadout, right? Your build is which abilities did you bring? How high did you tier them? You can't really get into too much of the tiering in 1 to 15 because you can only like put one, I think, ability point into a tier. So that isn't a huge deal in 1 to 15, but you have which abilities to bring, the ability tiering, and the amp. All those 3 things summed together is your build that you're bringing into a match. And so I think that, amps almost guaranteed are going to see a lot of work because this is the first time that we're getting, to see them in there. And we're going to get to see like exactly where those things go, whether or not they'll actually stay as very, very tiny bonuses. Basically, the idea behind it, I think, is that it just gives you a little bit of a feeling like you're controlling where your points are going. And it lets you feel as you level up, okay, I got another amp point. So I feel a little bit stronger because I got a little bit more stats. But for the most part, it's not like a big choice thing so much for amps. It's more of a feeling progression as you're leveling up. And then once you're at cap, I don't think it'll be something that's in as much flux, at least as things stand right now.
What do you think, Mark? Do you think the choices felt were they a little bit underwhelming?
I mean, I don't really know. I mean, because it didn't matter to me. I was choosing what I was going to choose. You know what I mean?
Mark was pushing 1 a lot.
Yeah. So a lot of people were complaining, like, "Well, you're just spamming your default attack," and I'm like, "Yeah, because it's doing enough damage to kick ass," And I was lining up my other attacks. So
can I actually defend you for a moment there, though? Because this is actually something that is like a lot of people sort of want a World of Warcraft or other game style rotation combat, right? Like, okay, I use this thing, it builds that, and then I do this, and sort of like a very obvious, okay, I'm gonna do this kind of thing, or maybe like at least like a priority system. Like I want to do this before doing this, but I always want to do those things in an order. When you have a limited action set, it's obviously much harder to actually put that into the game without making everything required because you don't have that many buttons to work with, right? So it's much more important that those abilities are interesting in and of themselves, that they do decent damage, and then that you leave room for someone to actually choose situational abilities. Like, I only want to use this when I want to snare. I don't want to use that all the time for damage because that would be silly. It's my snaring attack. Or I want to use this to CC. I don't want to use that all the time. Obviously, you don't want to only have one button that you're pushing for damage because that can get really, really boring. But, I mean, especially at lower levels, then, as long as, like I actually tend to play, especially while I'm leveling up, with mostly utility and skill, other things. I have mostly maybe one or two attacks are actually really focused on damage. I don't stack all damage all the time because I actually like having a lot of control. I like being able to pull way more mobs than I should be able to, and using all the control skills to be able to actually manage that situation instead of just going, okay, I'm gonna just burst down that one enemy and then move on to the next one and sort of go on in that order. And the reason why it actually works in WildStar, that the combat doesn't get super boring or whatever in when you're only pushing one button, which is what it sounds like, right? If you're only pushing one or two buttons for your main combat, it seems like it would be boring. And that is because of the layeredness. Like, I was talking so much about how exciting telegraphs are and how deep that can make the PvE content, especially when you're fighting. And I think that's still there for this game because, okay, maybe the ability itself isn't that exciting, but the aiming and the movement component, like, can I move while I'm doing it? Can I dodge telegraphs while I'm doing it? Does this ability move me while I'm doing it? All of that comes into play enough that the combat still feels fun and engaging while you're doing it, even though the ability itself sounds a little bit boring. So that's my thoughts on it.
And to add on that, I mean, as you're leveling, you're going to get tier points that you can add to different attacks or, you know, assault or utility or whatever. I stacked all of my tier points into my number 1 attack and my number 2 attack. Why? Because I'm using them the most, and 2, as I level, I'm always going to be having more points in them. So because I'm only going from 1 to 15, I stacked all my points into my main 2 attacks. So if you see me using my number 1 attack, it's because it's my most powerful attack. That's why. You know.
So overall, do you guys like the new system? The new, you know, obviously after the revamp of the way they're kind of setting up the skill system with the amp system and everything, does it seem like it's a pretty logical kind of? You think players and gamers and MMO players specifically are going to like this system?
I think that on the surface level, if you're just looking at it, like I was saying, it seems really simple. And that's why I'm sort of like going off and sounding a little bit drony, because I'm trying to defend it, but I'm trying to say that no, there is depth to the system and it makes sense in the game. But if you look at it, and the reason why I want to especially bring this up is because I know that now that the NDA on the 1 to 15 is dropped, people are going to start analyzing the abilities and trying to make builds and trying to do all that. And I probably would be right alongside you if I wasn't actually able to play the game. But but my point is that when you're doing that analysis without the actual context of the game and the fights and everything else, it seems way too simple. And it seems like this doesn't have depth. This isn't that interesting. But it is when you actually add the combat, when you add the encounter, when you add the, oh, this is what happened, this went wrong, let me add this to my ability bar so I can counter that. Once you're actually doing that, then it's engaging, then it's fun. Up until that, when you're just analyzing it, it's easy to analyze, but it's in the gameplay that it matters.
I guess what I don't understand is, yeah, I like having different abilities, but I'm so done with having 400 different abilities. Like, I remember with Tor, I had like 5 or 6 different taskbars down trying to come up with different things, and half of them I just never used. So it just comes down to the fact that I only use about 5 or 6 or 7 attacks anyway. And I'm pretty sure the people who came up with the MOBAs and all these other things kind of realized the same thing too. It's not like they just decided, aha, we're gonna give them less choice and we'll rule the world. It's not like that was what they came to one day. I'm pretty sure they did analytics and metrics, and they figured that, hey, people are only using this many. And it's simpler. It makes it a much more fun game, at least for me. And I know some people who, have all these crazy, hand gestures. I mean, I've got a G13 here. I've got a G9 here. And I've got a G19 keyboard. I've got more
G's everywhere.
I've got more macros than you could think of, okay? The point is I only use 7 or 8 buttons. I've got all this. Well, luckily this was given to me by sponsors. But my point is I don't use it. I don't use all of this is my point. I still spam the same 8 keys, Every now and then on a lucky day I might find some interesting reason or excuse that my old ass could figure out how to hit a combo to hit somebody with this finisher when they're stunned. But 9 times out of 10, there's so much shit blown up in my face that I'm like, oh, is the guy stunned? Ah, crap, he's not there anymore. You know, that's what normally happens by the time I figure out somebody's stunned. So spam 1, 2, 3, and I got up to 8 or 9 or 10. I'm good, man. You know, and here's the other thing. It allows me more time to look at what's going on the battlefield and enjoy the experience, especially when I hopefully will get to raiding. I can enjoy what's going on, because you know what I normally see as a tank? I'm hitting X, Y, and Z. I'm trying to set up my keys, and I'm looking down at my keyboard, or I'm looking at the kneecap of the boss. You know, I don't get to enjoy watching the battle. And so by having this set like this, I can actually kind of sit back. It's a different type of stress, but I can at least enjoy watching what's going on, and I can feel like I'm more in it, as opposed to, heck, Gary, did you play a Marauder in Tor? Did any
No.
of you guys play Okay. If you play a Marauder in Star Wars The Old Republic, this is how you PvP.
Yeah. You got a lot of different buttons.
That's how you PvP or raid in Tor with a Marauder, because you got to set up all these friggin' crazy windups, and I got to get this much of that, and now it'll proc this so that I can hit this one button if the guy is under 50% strength, you know, or stunned. I'm like, God bless America, man.
All right, well, let's talk about screw Star Wars. Stop talking about. Let's talk about new games. So let's talk about something a little bit more fun that I know everybody wants to hear you guys talk about, and that's PvP. So player versus player. How much time did you clock in? I see I've been rolling B-roll from your live stream here, Mark, and I know you guys were popping PvP matches like crazy. It looked almost like every chance you could get in between questing at some point. So
yeah.
First of all, tell me about the map a little bit. Like, what are we looking at here?
What was it? Walatiki.
Walatiki.
Walatiki is the map, and long story short, it's capture the flag. You're on one side, they're on the other, but in between you is a pit, and it's got 3 levels. So it's very channelized. It doesn't have a lot of ingress and egress ways in and out, which makes it good because, you know, it gives you more chances to fight. The second thing is instead of actually capturing a physical flag, you're capturing a big tiki mask. Same concept. The big difference is that unlike most capture the flags, in addition to just killing people, taking the mask, and then putting it back, or capturing the flag and putting it back, people can go in and steal the other flag. So you could be up 4-0, and if you're not paying attention, if you look at what's going on the screen now, I'm actually sneaking in to try to take a mask. You can go in and take their mask. So that's basically this level. I've not seen any of the other types of PvP. And here,
Well, you can't
if you look
get
at
it
that's
on the
me. I
15
just
anyway.
took the mask. Hold on, there goes me taking the mask, and now I'm running back with it. And you notice people are trying to grab it. But anyway, long story short, that's this map. The one thing I will tell you is obviously PvP is fun if you like PvP. But the interesting thing is, unlike most games, yes, they have stuns and they have roots and snares and bleeds and slows and knockbacks and knockdowns. However, they do not have chain stun locking, in which case you just sit there, you're stunned, and you just got to sit there and be screwed until you're dead. Because they give you the option of breakout combat. So if you get stunned, rooted, or slowed, or whatever, you can spam your F key and break out of it. Some people don't like that. I find it to be fine. I don't really know what you would replace it with, but long story short, no one minds being rooted, stunned, or slowed as long as you're not done until end of match. Ooh, look at me, I just got a point. Anyway, so the very fact that, you know, it happens, but I can get out of it, makes it completely palatable. I don't feel that any one class is OP. I wish that the Stalker had a little bit more burst, but all of the classes seem to be fairly even, because no matter what class I play in PvP, Warrior, DPSer, I've not played any heals because you have to kind of get high enough to actually heal. I don't feel gimped at all, because I get around the same amount of kills regardless of which class I play, which for a beta, that's pretty balanced. Farhan?
Yeah, so I guess first map-wise, I do wish that it was. I mean, like maybe this is because it is just random battlegrounds, especially at low levels, and it ends up being quite zergy. Maybe it'll be viable, like when you're actually in coordinated groups to branch off a little bit more. But the choke points are actually like quite narrow, and when you have the telegraphs going off, I mean, you saw it right there, that there's red everywhere on the ground, and this is something that is just like sort of mind-boggling when you're first dealing with it. That okay, I don't really know which red to dodge out of and which red not to, because so much of it is just auto attack in there. And like if I was gonna say anything about what I would like to see changed in PvP, it would be just that they not show the telegraph for the instant attacks. Anything that you can't dodge out of anyway, just don't show the telegraph for it, because it's just too much information that I can't start to process the telegraphs that actually matter. Like I can't process that the spell slinger's charging up his charge shot to shoot me and do tons of damage, because there's so many other telegraphs that are already overlapping it and doing that thing. Hopefully that's something that they tweak going forward. Otherwise, like I found the PvP quite fun. I like that the time to kill, at least in this bracket, is pretty reasonable. Like it's not very, very quick deaths all the time. I know that sort of sucks for Stalker PvP especially, because you sort of want to do that, but you know, you can do reasonable amounts of burst. You can do reasonable amounts of staying alive as well at the same time. So I like that they actually give you enough time to actually have a little bit of ebb and flow within a one-on-one when you actually do end up in one, or like a 2v2 or whatever. And there's definitely room for skill in the game, right? Like I ran into multiple situations where I was outnumbered, but because I was not I was turning much faster, and I was getting around behind them and doing other things, I was able to like get a couple kills and then run away, even when I'm outnumbered or whatever. Like the skill definitely is very, very important when you're actually like fighting in these big fights. Another thing that I found that was somewhat interesting is that when you're PvPing on this map, stealing the flag actually feels like I'm not 100% convinced that it's necessary, right? Like I like that it's in there, and that I like that it's doing it. I would just rather that. Maybe this is because the Dominion is like just sort of stomping on the Exile so much. I actually still don't know what happens.
Yeah. Right.
Like I literally don't know what happens when you lose a battleground, because I haven't lost one yet. But when maybe if it was a little bit more even, then stealing seems like it would have a point. I still haven't really seen the point of it, because every single time that I've seen the flag get stolen, the person gets, you know, chased down, killed before. I guess you just stole one on the stream, so maybe my point is moot. But almost every time I've very easily been able to kill the person. When you're holding the mask, you can't use any mobility skill. You can't dodge. You can't. I believe you can't dodge. You can't sprint. You can't. Yeah. And you can't use anything like a blink or a leap or anything, because if you do, then you'll drop the flag wherever you were jumping from. So the combat feels a little bit weird when you're trying to, especially steal the flag and going all the way back. I think that if you have the flag stolen, then you have some mobility while you're running back. Maybe it's different than when you're first capping the mask. I don't know, but right now I don't really see stealing the flag as being super viable. Maybe if there was more coordination, you could sort of have people peeling for you to pull them off you while you're holding the flag as it's stolen. Then it would work.
So I gotta ask a question. Still, like, insanely I gotta ask a question. Like, do you guys think that like I know it's only a weekend, and I know it's only level 1 to 15, but everybody's going to ask the esports question of, do you think it could possibly turn into some sort of competitive? Does it have what it takes to kind of get competitive on Twitch and people to start live streaming it and watching it and really kind of getting into it?
So I can't really speak to arena gameplay. I think that if it was going to happen, it would be in arena, because Battlegrounds is there's too many players for it. I mean, you can sort of shine, you can sort of show off, and I know that like one of our sort of friendly streamers, Blank Space, when he's streaming for Subterfuge Vanguard, like this last stream that you've been showing was done sort of like in a joint thing with him. I know that he can sort of show off his skills and sort of show that, okay, I'm beating multiple opponents. And I think that maybe there'll be a little bit of people who want to just watch like a really good player sort of do really well and see what they can do. But I don't think that it would be like something that, okay, like esports kind of level. As for Arena, we can't talk about it obviously because it's not in 1 to 15. But just, my guess is that it would suffer from a lot of the same problems that normal MMOs have, which is that it is too hard to track for people who don't play the game themselves. And so I don't really see it taking off as an esport, but I think that's completely fine as long as the game is a lot of fun and it draws in enough people to actually play and for me to go kill, then I'll be happy. Mark?
I mean, I don't see it being successful as an esport, at least as of what I've seen so far. Only for the fact that, yeah, it'll be too hard to try to track the different builds that people are going to have. So that's generally something that esports casters like to talk about. Oh, well, so-and-so has got this and he's using this. It's an 8-bar system, so you're going to be able to quickly see what you're going to do, and people are going to min-max at that level of competition, so everyone's going to kind of look the same. So I don't know how interesting that would be to watch. The other reason too is they don't have any ghost cams, right? That's one thing that we've been asking, or we asked, a while ago when we first heard about it. So other than just having another tune and having like instead of a 5v5, you'd have like a 4v4 or something, and somebody would have to be in first person views to chase people around to see what's going on, and they'd have to have some kind of flag to say "Don't shoot me" or something, So I just don't know how they would pull it off. It doesn't. Also, MMOs, unlike FPSs, and people are complaining about the frame rates, and the reason why the resolution is low is I'm not a Twitch partner, so they automatically govern you down to X, Y, or Z resolution anyway. But the point is MMOs generally do not convey very well when you look at a commercial. They just historically have not, whereas an FPS is able to do that. So I think FPSs or some of the strategy type games kind of come off better for the esport kind of genre. I just don't know of any MMO that's really been totally successful doing that. I mean, I know.
All right, last up today.
Trying.
We got one more section we need to kind of like touch on a little bit. How much did you guys do with crafting? I know if we don't cover, people are going to want to know. So did you guys cover any crafting at all and do any of it? Check out the system?
I've done a lot of crafting. I couldn't show it off really that effectively on the stream because, Mark was the one streaming and I didn't want to sit there and be like, okay, Mark, click over here and then wait for the Twitch delay to actually catch up so I can actually see where he actually managed to click and so it's hard to show off, but I actually really, really enjoyed the crafting. When you're crafting armor and weapons, basically, to just get to the roots of it without actually having it in front of you, it's hard to describe. But basically, you can really customize the stats that actually appear on your gear. Like, instead of having maybe 1,000, or either 1,000 schematics, each for whatever kind of stat distribution you wanted, or the other option, just not having very much choice at all in terms of what you see at, whatever the developers decided to give you a schematic for is what you can make. Basically, in WildStar, you can customize the stats that end up appearing on the gear, like for a given item level, and depending on which crafting materials you add in, like power cores or whatever, you can customize. Like, okay, there's a little schematic, and you can say, I want more of this stat, and then I also want to add a little bit of this stat, but this stat isn't that important to me, so I'm going to take some charge out of that one and shift its itemization over to another one. So there's a lot of fine-tuning that you can do when you're doing crafting in order to do it. There's also the possibility for you to actually make gear that's better than you should be able to make for a given level. And that's because if you overcharge your craft, like you put in more itemization points than you are supposed to be able to for a given item, then it gives you a chance to fail. And so what they've done is that they've given the option of failure to the crafter. Like, if you don't want to deal with failure, if you just want to craft your item and you just want to move on, like most, AAA MMOs these days where they don't actually have failure as an option, then, you can do it. You just keep to the limits of whatever the item is supposed to have. But if you want to go beyond that, if you want to make the best items, if you want to actually make stuff that's super competitive with other items, and I will say that crafting does seem like a very effective way of getting gear. Like, it's the crafting gear is much better than the quested gear. Like if you craft gear, then your stats will be better. It was to the point where we were live streaming PvP last night with Blank Space, me, and Mark on the Dominion side, and we had some Carbine developers who were playing Exiles in PvP. And when Blank Space started to craft some gear to sort of make up for some of his slots that maybe weren't as good, then the Carbine dev was like, "Oh, you're cheating," because you're like getting better gear than the other side. Like, "Oh, you're just trying to get even better gears or whatever." And I know he's joking. It's Chris Lynch. He's like their combat guy. I'm sure that the crafting people, developers, would be like all up in arms over it. But basically, it gives you a lot of power if you actually bother to put the effort in to craft the best items, and that's an option. So I think it's really cool.
Which is a great thing to hear. It's great to hear that crafting matters. That's the reason why a lot of times I don't craft, A, because I don't have the time, but B, what's the point, depending on what game you're playing. In this game, crafting matters, at least from what we can see from 1 to 15. I hope it continues, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right. 30 seconds. Wrap it up, Farhan. What do you got to say?
30 seconds. Yeah, bad. Okay, so WildStar is amazing. Just, I mean, when you guys get your hands on it, when you can actually play it and get going with it, I know that when you're watching it, it seems easy or this and that. Watching it is nowhere near as good. And this is coming from someone, I actually watch a lot of Twitch streams. Like, I know watching streams isn't for everyone, but I like watching other games. And watching WildStar doesn't even compare to playing WildStar. So it's an amazing game. Just wait till you get your hands on it.
Mark Taylor.
Definitely see your friends, see your guilds. Make sure you fill out the survey so that you can try to get a key. I know that they're going to be inviting a whole lot more people into the game. There are a lot of people, relative to all the betas that are out right now, there are a lot of people in this beta. The world is alive.
You heard it there. You heard it first. Mark Taylor. Follow him on Twitter, Guild Umbra. And of course, go over and check out their guild page and live streaming a little bit more these days. Especially, probably expect some more WildStar once that goes back up.
Can I live stream with Gamebreaker?
Sure, absolutely. You're always more than welcome. Farhan Siddiqui. Follow him on Twitter, Unindel, UNINDEL, and of course, right here on UDSP every Monday at 3 PST. You can follow me at Gary Gannon, follow Gamebreaker TV, Gamebreaker TV, and make sure you come over to our Facebook page, facebook.com/Gamebreaker TV. We do the show live on Mondays at 3, so come on over. It's always a blast, and we'll see you next week for some more UDSP.